Hello and welcome back to Brain Muffin at the Movies, and thank you very much for subscribing, and please click that bell icon for notifications. Thank you very much. And here we have from Cosmic Book News. Now this is an interesting take. This is very strange. This is the Fox Disney, because remember Fox got bought by Disney, or merged, or whatever it was going on while the Dark Phoenix movie was in play, and they originally wanted to come out before Captain Marvel. There's still this, female-led superhero nonsense. Elektra was a Marvel superhero movie, came out years ago, female-led, Jennifer Garner, and people forget. It's just like Blade and Black Panther. And all this now people are starting to admit, yeah, Black Panther was first by 20 years. I mean, it just is insane. But there's this interesting take about, was this sabotaged? And, if this is true, Disney must be printing money, because they have billions to just pilfer away at this point. They're doing horrible with Star Wars. The MCU is about to come crashing and burning, and now they've really took the legs out from under. And they're going to reboot. So this actually leads to the other rumor that a lot of the prequel hate, especially in the years that led up to George selling, was led by Disney under the covers. The prequel, it was just there. Some people loved it, some people didn't, and the hate didn't get so bad until later on. It came out with old and in with the new. It's out with the old, in with the new, with a new reason for the failure of Simon Kinberg's Dark Phoenix movie may be the Disney Fox deal. The Captain Marvel movie and the promotion of Brie Larson as the new face of the MCU. And Feige has gone on record as saying that. And he's even said that she's the most popular character of the MCU now. And, I don't know what he's smoking, but, 11 times in 6 years, that thing's been rebooted. It's like it gets half a year and it gets rebooted. It's amazing. With Dark Phoenix being a complete disaster at the box office, the blame game is now being played out in Hollywood trade sites, with Deadline offering a spin on things in an article that places most of the blame on Fox Studios and, of course, none on Disney, which acquired the company in a $71 billion deal. And remember, this was put on hold. This should have come out earlier, and because of the deal and different things and what was in the air, and there was this, a pregnant pause from Fox. Deadline offers numerous reasons why Dark Phoenix failed, but includes in their report a tidbit that is worth mentioning in that the movie was originally supposed to be 2 parts, and I probably should have been. I think Disney should have just let Fox run its course. It said that Fox execs changed gears during late pre-production and demanded that it only be 1 movie. And I think this was to the garner, to not spoil the deal. But who knows? Now, remember, this is a rehash, right? We've seen the Dark Phoenix saga previously with X-Men, whatever that last one was. I actually like the first few X-Men movies, and then by the time we get Jean Grey turning into Dark Phoenix, it just. And then then we had the quasi reboot and other things, and now it looks like it's going to get rebooted a second time in 12 years. In addition, reports are surfacing that a much better cut of X-Men Dark Phoenix exists. This is, again, we got the Snyder cut, we got the Zack Snyder cut. There's released the Gareth Edwards cut of Rogue One. It's another cut that Disney. I would not be surprised if Disney had a hand in this, because Disney execs, I think, screwed up Rogue One. They definitely completely botched the Solo. They blamed it on Kathleen Kennedy, and she's too incompetent to have done that on her own. And now we have this, so who knows what the movie execs at Disney are really doing. According to the fans that have viewed the cut, it would have added 22 minutes or more of footage. Fans that view the 2 different cuts of the Dark Phoenix movie offer lines were changed in the theatrical version of the film that took away from the much better extended version. Quite often when you cut too much. Now, Infinity War was a movie that could have had 45 minutes cut out, and you would have made zero difference on that. In game, a little bit less than that, probably about half an hour could have been cut out of that movie. But The release of Phoenix was a runtime of less than 2 hours. So, 2.5 hours then, while the preceding two X-Men were nearly 2.5 hours in length. So this is surprising. This almost feels like, let's say it is Fox totally, and Disney's not to blame here. They're just cutting their losses and running. And now they've cost their company $200 million, and perhaps more. With this terrible movie. Comparisons to the Kinberg cut are now being made to what happened with Zack Snyder's Batman vs. Superman and Justice League, cut down to 2 hours. Although I will say Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Cut, is very long, but it makes a heck of a lot more sense than the theatrical release. But what it also shows is it should have been 2 movies. And I don't know if that was Zack or if that was DC trying to push. They were trying to catch up to Marvel in one movie, and that was a mistake. They were years behind Marvel. You can't do that in one movie. And then, interfere with Zack Snyder's vision and fans campaign for the Snyder, which is never going to happen. Because if they release that is the executives admitting they were wrong, and that's never going to happen. Now, why would Fox cut Dark Phoenix and even go so far as to change lines in the film? Did the Disney-Fox deal cause executives to demand changes on Simon Kinberg's Dark Phoenix? Most likely. Did the similarities between the Dark Phoenix story and starring Sophie Turner and the Brie Larson Captain Marvel movie cause Disney to interfere? Most definitely. And I'm gonna guess that this movie, because it was scheduled originally to come out before, was well down the path, and I wouldn't be surprised if they just copied it. Now, granted, there's some similarity with the characters and stuff like that, but maybe, but I wouldn't be surprised. And it would be, if Disney interfered, it would be through an intermediary. It's kind of like what they do with Rotten Tomatoes now, where it's run by a former Disney executive. So Disney doesn't have to come out and say, hey, you have to do this. They just have to do wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And because they have the same inside baseball lingo, they're going to pick up on it, and they're going to do what Disney wants. So if it's kind of like all the stuff with Brie Larson, not Brie Larson, but with Captain Marvel, and many theaters reporting completely empty, sold out theaters. Showing after showing after showing, day after day after day. And so there was a lot of monkey business. There were some foundations that were buying tickets and sending women, underprivileged and the like. I think that eventually they were just buying tickets and nobody wanted to go because it was a horrible movie. And that's why you had no shows at every single showing and all the theaters it was in. And I understand it did very well overseas and worldwide, but in the States, there's a lot of monkey business with that number. And so that's what I'm saying. Disney, it's almost like they have money to burn. So we can't have something else competing with Brie Larson and Captain Marvel. So they tank this one and lose 200 mil. They spend at least 100 mil promoting Captain Marvel through fake ticket sales to get people thinking that it's a good movie. Very similar to what what was his name? But basically, the Church of Scientology did that with a lot of L. Ron Hubbard books, where they'd go in and buy them in mass and get it on the New York Times bestseller, and people think, oh, it must be a good book, and then they'd go get it. Dynetics, or as well as his Battlefield Earth book, and then there was another series. I think it was 10 volumes. I forget the name of it, but it wasn't very well written. And eventually, B. Dalton Books and others, they caught wind of this, and because they were sales, but they were fake sales, and they pulled back on how many copies they would do. You had to pre-order or order them. They'd only have 2 or 3 on the shelf at a time, so people just couldn't buy 15, 20 copies. So I wouldn't be surprised Disney doing something similar here with Captain Marvel and then tanking Phoenix. Again, it's also a Fox product. They want to reboot X-Men. They've claimed that they're going to come out with a Deadpool rated R movie, but I highly doubt it. If they do, it'll be the last one. And what better way to say, wait a couple of years and say, hey, we're going to reboot the franchise. It needs new life, and that's to tank the last movie. If this movie let's say this movie was very good and did very well, then Disney would have a problem, because they'd have to continue the current frame, but they don't want any of those actors. They don't want to honor any of those projects, any of those contracts. Now they have a chance to get rid of it. So I know it's a bit conspiratorial, but that is business, and this is what TV execs do with shows all the time. When they get too expensive, they don't want to. If they don't run their course and the stars are saying, "Hey, we're kind of getting sick of it. We want to walk away," they change it. They change the formula. They make them get rid of some staff. This is what they did with Mythbusters. People really liked the formula. Then they had him go back to just being Adam. and Jamie. People didn't like it, and then of course they moved it around, and then of course the ratings dropped. That was inevitable, and then they had an excuse to cancel it, which they did. That's because it become too expensive for them, and that's what. And this is standard business practice with these executives. It's I think very disgusting and very negative, but they do it. Let's back to the article instead of my diatribe. A month before Captain Marvel did Fox decided to release Dark Phoenix as one movie because Fox Disney deal was going through. Reliance, okay, wait, this is kind of repeating itself. So the release date was changed again. It moved away from Captain Marvel. It's come out after. Plus, again, sometimes if the 2-hour cut was good, let's just say, and or let's say 2 hours 5 minutes, whatever it is, and then you take half an hour out of it. Yeah, it can make a lot less sense. That's what I'm saying with the Batman. This was way too long a movie, the ultimate cut, but it made a lot more sense than the theatrical cut. And it should have been 2 movies. And again, if this was 2 movies, originally planned as 2 movies, and then reduced, so that the scripts get approved, the outline gets approved, the treatment gets approved. We know where they're going, and then they say, "Oh, we're gonna make it 1." And now, where do you take? What do you cut out? What do you throw away? What do you, instead of maybe have a scene that was 10, 15 minutes long, what can you have as a reminiscing of just a couple of sentences and dialogue that take its place? Now, obviously, that dialogue, you'll have the storyline, but what you won't have is that emotional impact with the audience. You won't have that connection. And it's a little bit more empty. And the more you cut, the more empty it gets. No blame for Simon Kinberg and about the reshoots. Interesting enough, Deadline's piece offers no blame toward writer, director, producer Simon. However, the same can't be said of online reviews and fan commentary. Kinberg is getting hammered with the failure of Dark Phoenix, which only brought in a measly $33 million. Deadline spins things, stating, "We understand Kinberg got to make the film he wanted to make and was flexible about reshoots with the studio." Because he probably wanted to keep his job, especially with Disney. I mean, how many we've seen with Lucasfilm in particular, how many, I think more directors have been fired and replaced than have been kept, right? There's only been, I guess there's technically been 2 directors who have been fired, and that's JJ and Rian Johnson. Everybody else has been fired. The guy for Episode 9 was fired, but while he was writing it, and JJ has to come in and finish it. We had, Gareth Edwards was essentially fired by the Disney execs, and they had to do almost 50% reshoots with a different director and different music director. The original director was fired before Gareth, and then with Solo, we had the same kind of nonsense, and Ron Howard kind of come in and fix, in air quotes, the movie. So this is not surprising, and he probably, looking at what Disney's done, said, "Hey, yeah, I'll do reshoots," because he wants to keep his job and finish the film. The film he wanted to make, their own report states Dark Phoenix was originally intended for be 2 parts. That's the movie he wanted to make. That's the movie he signed on, and it got changed, and then it got changed again. So as far as I'm concerned, they have reduced his movie by 60%. So you take the 2 movies, you get rid of one that's 50%, and it's more than 10%, right? If it was a 2.5 hour movie, and so that's an hour and 50 minutes, and then you take a half hour out, that's it's what, a fourth of the movie. So still, that's quite a bit. So let's just say it's 60% just for sake of argument. That's bad. And then you're going to have reshoots. So on the 40% you're letting them keep, now you're going to do reshoots and you're going to cut it back. That's a bad sign. Their own report states Dark Phoenix. Okay, sorry, read that. Certainly, this fan is more than 55-year history of the comics. And remember The Last Stand. The Last Stand was horrible, which also wanted to correct things with the 2-part Dark Phoenix movie. He also wrote, but he never got the chances because the Disney Fox deal. Yeah, this is what screwed up everything. And this nearly made Disney. It's so close to monopoly now. It's not even funny. Regarding reshoots, said they don't plan for reshoots. Discussing new nuances, said for all these movies, Marvel's really brilliant at the scheduling pickups with their budget and schedule, so it's all prepared, and we have never been that smart. So yeah, there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of conflicting information, I should say. Captain Brie Larson can't lose regarding Captain Marvel and Brie Larson while promoting the release of Captain Marvel amid fan backlash. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige told fans, "Note, bold emphasis my own. She's one of the most popular characters in our comics." Not true. She's one of the most powerful characters in the universe. That's probably true, and will be the most powerful character in the MCU. That is probably true. Thor has kind of been cucked out. Captain America's dead. Iron Man's dead. Of course, he's just a suit anyway. And no one has some of the powers that she has, the almost magical powers to fling energy and stuff like that. Thanos is gone, and I don't think there's anybody else that could compete with her. Most everybody's a suit in the Marvel Universe. Maybe Spider-Man, but he's just kind of hard to kill, but at least he's a little bit more than a suit. And so we'll see. And so when you have a statement like that, so it starts with the falsehood, because she's not the most popular characters in our comics at all. It's been rebooted multiple times, and I know there's been multiple iterations. There's been men and women. You have Monica Rambeau, you have Marvel, you have Jinvel, you have there's so many I can't. You have a semi-cloned son, you have a daughter. There's others, and it just Miss Marvel was probably the most popular, and then she eventually became Carol Danvers, who was Miss Marvel for 20 years. I can't remember exactly when she came out. It was in the 90s and early 2000s. Then she gets rebranded as Captain Marvel. Takes up I want to say that's 2006 though. She becomes Captain Marvel, but it may not have been that long ago. Anyways, one of the highlights of my career at Marvel was introducing her at Comic-Con. Yeah, okay. So, Feige is all a-gaga with Brie, and Captain Marvel is about to lead and be the forefront. So we can't have that because they're going to fold in. Disney's going to fold in the X-Men that they own into the MCU at some point. And again, I know it's just conspiracy theory here, but if Dark Phoenix does really well and kicks butt and brings in $1 billion like Captain Marvel, let's say it's a legitimate billion, right? They're not buying tickets, they're not having empty sold out theaters and all that other shenanigans going on with Captain Marvel. Then they can't fold it in as easily. This cast has to carry forward, and the universes are separate. You'd have to have some kind of gimmick to get them together. Now you can let it kind of go for a few years, let it die out, and then reboot inside the MCU. What will happen if audiences favored and like? Okay, here we go. Jean Grey as Dark Phoenix was supposed to be released prior, and that may have hurt Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel was positioned to ride the coattails of Infinity War and get the normies back in the theater awaiting Endgame, and even though they didn't need to see it, and again, but there's so much gimmickry and so much shenanigans with those numbers that I don't trust the sales. I'm sure those tickets were purchased, but the fact that who exactly was buying is a real question. Feige himself said that Brie Larson and Captain Marvel were taking the lead. Yes, and I've done videos on that, multiple videos on that. People keep saying they think Spider-Man's going to lead. I'm like, no. Spider-Man is Iron Man's replacement. And Captain America was was really the real leader of the Avengers, and Iron Man was kind of this side core. And I think they're going to try and redo that dynamic between Captain Marvel and Spider-Man, but Spider-Man's going to lose out much bigger than Iron Man did. And I think Robert saw the handwriting on the wall where they're going. They're going woke, and he said, I'm done. And he took a lot of money for those last few movies. And he said, yeah, I'm finished. And I think he's brought that character was brought to a very good conclusion. I know it's sad. He has a daughter and he dies, but considering where he was in the beginning in phase 1, at the end of phase 3, I think it's a good story arc, and it's good to lay that character to rest. Similar with Captain America, him going back, being able to have a second chance with Peggy Carter and have a real life with her. That's awesome. And now we're going to get some flashback type movies with Black Widow because she's dead, which I think sucks. I'd actually like to see her lead at least kind of this transition phase of the Avengers. She's kind of the voice of reason. Bring back the two sides. Finish the coming together that was really started in Endgame, and finish that out and meld the Avengers back together. And then if Captain Marvel proves herself to be a worthwhile leader, that's fine. But just to have her lead because Kevin Feige says so is just stupid. She's not been there. She's not really earned that right yet. She's just showing up because she outranks everybody. So anyway, so Feige said, like I said, that can't happen if X-Men, Dark Phoenix, Jean Grey, and Sophie Turner come out on top. Again, that's what I said. And I have not pre-read this article, so I'm glad that my ramblings in this article are kind of colliding. Certainly fans, even the original audience, saw the original better version of Dark Phoenix prior to Captain Marvel. They have a second guess that Feige and Marvel Studios were doing, even so far as accusing Captain Marvel of ripping off Dark Phoenix. And again, we have a similarity of storyline. Captain Marvel cannot fail. And that's why I think Disney did all those back end deals to make sure sales were good, to get the train going so that people were pulled in theaters. Billions of dollars were at stake. So this is a bit of a long game. So they make a lot of money on potentially on Captain Marvel. But they're also losing. I think they have misjudged. This movie should have been, okay, it's fine coming out now. Probably should have come out in the fall. And should not have been cut back. And maybe it loses $50 million, $100 million at most, but $200 million potentially. That's insane. And I think this is the beginning of the downtrend. This is kind of the start. We'll see with the other Marvel movies, but I think you're just going to see them just go down, 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 down. For a lot of people, Endgame was it. And they don't really see the MCU continuing. And it all adds up. So adding these things up, Simon Kinberg's initial plan is to make a 2-part Dark Phoenix movie. But during pre-production, he was forced to only make it a one movie. Again, decided to cut the runtime. So there you've got at least 60% of his original plan done and gone, plus reshoots, plus changes. Disney's all behind this. Dark Phoenix is darker and more psychological complex than other X-Men movies. Even in the previous one, it was very dark. What was it? Phoenix. I read it. Now I've forgotten what it is already. The Last Stand. Yeah. X-Men: The Last Stand. Has always been an off-season release, and original plan was to go out ahead. So it would have been March. So that was March 8th. So that would have been like February, and the like. Deadline spins. The release date changes and problems as the fault of Fox Studios PR. I think in some ways Disney told Fox they had to do something, and they kind of tripped over their own feet. And so it's very convenient for Disney to blame Fox, but it's really Disney where it's coming from. Let's skip down to Disney interference. So prior to Disney, according to going through Disney, have anything to do with Fox Studios. According to a Fox leaker, Disney execs were spotted on set on the movies. It claimed Disney execs were keeping an eye on things. Of course they were. And they wanted to make sure that this merger happened because they really wanted these properties. So Simon Kinberg and Fox decided on a 2-part epic movie, and of course that was changed. Word on the Disney came from on high, so Kinberg was forced to make it only one film. Because basically you would have had one film this year and the next film in then a year or two, and you're too far into the Disney era. Disney wants this closed, done, and rebooted in 2 years. So we can't have another movie 2 years from now, or even a year from now. And then they got to wait another 2 years, and that's 3-4 years from now. That's too long. And with this failing, they'll write it off. Let's say it's $200 million. They'll write it off. They'll probably make it back in park. They'll raise all the park prices, $10 a ticket or something, to make the money back. And then they have an excuse. Well, people didn't like this version of it. They didn't like where it went, so let's redo it. And it's all in a nice bow and ready for re-release. There's only one. So Disney, Feige, and meanwhile, Feige, Disney, and Marvel Studios have been developing the Captain Marvel movie starring out along similar lines. Probably just stole the script idea and then massaged it into the Captain Marvel universe. Kinberg's Dark Phoenix was in November, so that was supposed to be released last November, so that I stand corrected, which would have been... Captain Marvel was quite a ways away, so I don't think it would have interfered much. But again, as a 2-part, that's another 4 years down the road, especially from 2018, because we probably wouldn't get the next one to 2020, and then the 2 more years after that, in particular. And if it makes money and it does well, then they're really screwed, because then there's probably another 5-year run minimum, and then it's another 2 years past that. Now you're looking 7, 8, 9 years down the road, and that's way too long. That's way too long of a long game. Disney wants control of these properties now. They have to finish this out and make sure that it bombs. Disney gets raised to a $1 billion gross. Which is, I think, a lot of it's fake. So 2 weeks later. So you have undergoes cuts, rewrites, reshoots, which also delays production and the like. Extended cut details as the 2-parter Jessica was to play. Okay, so Xavier is to leave the banquet. This is a lot of details about the 2-part version, which is fine, which I don't really care that much about. Now, even Ethan Van Sciver's done some on his videos. He's also talked about the actress playing. So he doesn't think she looks like Jean Grey, but I didn't think that who played her previously didn't look a lot like her either. But was never a huge X-Men fan. Was somewhat of a fan of Wolverine and liked Cyclops and liked the video game. But the comic book, the comic and all that, not so much. So I don't really have a dog in this fight. But until Principal Photographer blindsided the entire team, cut the budget, and formed the creative team to scale down to one movie. Yeah. So this has Disney's fingerprints all over it. They wanted this done. It need to have been, Jessica Chastain signed on, and then the script changed. They had to delay her from shooting. Yeah. I think this has Disney's fingerprints all over it. Let's see if there's any comments we can look at really quickly. And really, it's to get the kind of thing they wanted, to be able to reboot and have an excuse. It needed to fail. 200 mil is a failure, but now we have this as an $80 million failure. Now we have a $200 million failure. Disney keeps this up. I don't know what's going to happen. But I think the Marvel Phase 4, I don't think is going to do well. I think the Black Panther 2 has the potential to do well. The solo movie for Black Widow has a potential to do well if it's a good story, mainly because they were a part of, Black Widow's been around since early Phase 1. So there's some deep ties there with the audience, but there's no deep tie with Captain Marvel at all. And there's maybe the Wasp standalone movie is going to might do fairly well. But they're going to have a low budget on that. It's probably 125 mil, maybe 150, but I doubt it. I mean, Captain Marvel was the lowest, but adjusted for inflation was the lowest. It had it was 150 mil, at least that was the reported budget, which was the first Iron Man movie, but adjusted for inflation, it's actually lower in constant dollars. And there's a couple of hit or miss ones in there. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is another one that should do fairly well. But, other than that, a lot of it, there's going to be franchise fatigue setting in on the general audience. There's going to be a lot of things, and if DC could get out of their own way and have a decent DCEU, there'd be some serious competition. For years Marvel had zero competition in building this franchise, this environment, and and that may continue because I don't think DC they're just lost. They're just running in circles. They're about ready to reboot the entire. They're rebooting the DC universe on their streaming stuff. They're getting close to a semi-reboot even with the TV. We've got Arrow going away. We've got Batwoman coming in. The Flash, God knows, only knows what they're going to do with that. The Legends is also teetering, but they're all kind of headed toward Infinite Crisis. And then once Infinite Crisis, and I believe it's going to be a 4-parter across all of them, there may be a complete and total reset and of all that stuff. And we already see it with Titans and some of their other shows, and they've already canceled Swamp Thing because of various reasons, taxes and different stuff. Even though I still see the Swamp Thing ads on YouTube, which is pretty funny. It's like, it's coming. It's like, no, it's not. And that's pretty funny. That's actually pretty accurate. Consume, and that is the Disney mantra. But as long as people buy the tickets. But what do you think? Do you think Disney had nothing to do with this? Do you think it's coincidence? Was it all Fox just trying to wrap it up? But it feels like Disney said, "Hey, Fox, you got to get this wrapped up." And really, what's kind of screwy is they could have wrapped up, had it in November. It would have played. Maybe by the time you get into the Christmas season, it's already well played. May even not even be in theaters. And then it's March. That's another 3 months. I don't know if people would have said, "Oh, wait a minute, didn't we see this movie already?" But again, Disney could not, risk this being a good movie. So if it would have been 2-parters, that's 9 years. If it's a good movie, but if they can get a bad movie, one movie, get it out, get it done. This is going to end the current run of X-Men. 2 years from now, we're going to see it reappear, folded into the MCU in some fashion. Maybe the X-Men is really more of a Phase 5 type of thing, but who knows? We may see Rogue appear and take Captain Marvel's powers away from her within the MCU. That would be interesting storyline too. See how they handle that. But there you go. So I know it's this is a very long video, and a lot of this is conspiratorial on my part, but there's a lot of Disney fingerprints all over this mess, and I have a feeling that they wanted it to fail, but 200 mil may be a bit steep. But like I said, they'll make it back up in merchandising and other nonsense. It is Disney, and they basically know how to print money, and it sounds like they were doing it. All right, thanks for stopping by so much, and thanks for clicking like. Thanks for sharing all these videos. I see tweets and retweets all the time. It's awesome. Thank you very much, and helping me grow this channel. And we're really pushing to get to 2,000. I mean, we're at 1,500, but man, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to 2,000. I think maybe just a hop. That'd be awesome. Thank you very much, and we will see you. Goodbye. Okay, it helps if I push that button. Now, the dogs were quiet. The second I unmute, they start barking. My son's coming home. Man, I can hear Toby's toenails. He's upstairs. Good night. All right, let's get this done and get it recorded and edited and off to bed. All right, Oh, I'm really loud. That's why. Okay, I got that other thing up way too high. All right, 3, 2, 1. Maybe not.